My name is Miguel Ohara. I'm this dimension's one and only Spider-Man.
Let me ask you two questions. Number one, what happens when Spider-Man fails? Not just failing on the level of letting a few people die, but the level of losing billions. Number two, what does that kind of loss and guilt do to someone, especially a character who in all other forms of media tends to be light and fun? The answer is that you get Spider-Man 2099, also known as Miguel Ohara. In a franchise of movies with so many classic villains, what makes Miguel different? What makes him darker? And no, not the fact he's Hispanic. That's not what I mean when I say darker. Today on the 202nd episode of Villain Review, I will be analyzing the character's motives, personality, and best scenes to find out. And as always, at the end of the video, I'll be giving him a score 1 out of 10.
I thought it was harmless. But I was wrong.
When we first meet Miguel, he and his AI assistant Lila create the first ever means to travel to different dimensions without their particles destabilizing, an issue that plagued all the characters from the first film. Traveling throughout space and time, Miguel would find a version of himself that was happy, a version where he had a wife and a daughter, and after that universe's Miguel would get killed, he decided to step in and make this universe his new home. Everything seemed to be going well at first, raising his child, posing happily for match cuts at soccer games, that is, until his presence in the universe resulted in the entire thing falling apart, losing his family and friends and everyone else who called the universe home. Scarred by that event, he decided to team up with the best spider people across space and time, which is really just like every spider person, and create a universe of spiders dedicated to protecting the multiverse in all its forms. One of the main ways he does this is through the preservation of canon events, moments that have to happen in every universe in order for their timeline to stay intact. The two main ones we know about being Uncle Ben dying and or a police captain close to Spider-Man dying. Or if you're Andrew Garfield, everyone you know dies. Tough luck. This of course is a problem for our main Spider-Man, Miles, whose dad just recently became captain and thus adds him to the death queue. There's probably already some comments on this video talking about how Miguel isn't a villain, he's an antagonist, and yes, you're correct, good job. It's also easy to judge Miguel's choices as against what Spider-Man is, but what I like most about this character is how the context of his origin completely justifies his thought process. Miguel thinks sacrificing one life to save many is the only option he has, but I think that's only because he's lost so much. A lot of times people come up with reasons outside of their reach to justify losing their loved ones, and I think this rule around canon events might just be what Miguel uses to help with dealing with all of that sadness and guilt. I think it's going to be interesting to see more into what caused Miguel's universe to fall apart, and I think it's going to turn out to be a lot more complicated than just interrupting canon events. He's a man dealing with a lot of sadness and guilt, and I for one actually like seeing a darker Spider-Man.
If you hadn't been bit, your Peter Parker would have lived. Instead, he died.
Most spider people are a bunch of jokesters, quipping around all the place, keeping the vibes light. Miguel, for one, stands out because of the fact he's not like that. The fact he can feel like Spider-Man one moment and the complete opposite the next. Something I think is awesome about him is how scary and intimidating he can be. He almost feels like a symbiote suit Spider-Man in how aggressive and ruthless he is. Matched with an incredible design and theme and performance, it makes him easily one of the coolest Spider-Man we've ever seen. And that includes this guy. It's nice too that while he can be this crazy Spider-Man vampire guy, there are a few moments you kind of get to feel how he used to be. A side of his character that reminds you he is Spider-Man and that he has some of these traits found in all spider people. We see it in his intro scene that he feels a little more lively, and while he's not like cracking jokes like other Spider-Men, he doesn't seem as angsty and serious as he does later. When he gets in that zone though, it makes complete sense how deadpan and cold he comes across, especially when you remember not only how much he's lost, but the fact he's responsible for it. Losing one person is one thing, but being responsible for the death of billions is a whole other thing. And while Miguel does have this disconnect from what it means to be Spider-Man, it makes complete sense when you take into account just how much devastation he's gone through. He's a character who in this movie I think is at his lowest point, and I hope at least in the next film he's going to redeem himself in this battle against the Spot, a Phoenix Spider-Man rising from the ashes. The intro scene with Gwen is great. It's a tremendous introduction for the character. The one scene where he actually feels like more of a fun character and not just emo Spider-Man. His interactions with Gwen are awesome, and it's just a really fun way to start this movie off. The bummer though about him is the same problem I have with Spot. The fact they set him up and then he doesn't really come back until the second half of the movie. I will say though, it works a little better for Miguel because him not showing up until the second half, it feels a lot more natural than Spot becoming this multiversal Godzilla apocalypse powerful villain, and then they just forget about him. They just move on. Aside from that though, I love Miguel's involvement in the second half of the movie, or most of it anyway. I like the way he talks to Miles. It's like he has sympathy for him, but also he's like, this ain't negotiable. Like, try something. It's not gonna go well. The following chase is one of the highlights of the film. I love how relentless Miguel is and how we see that darker side of him start to come out as he loses his composure in pursuit of Miles. I will say though, me personally, it's hard to buy the fact Miles escapes him and the whole Spider Society. I know it's a movie and people are gonna have plot armor and all that stuff, but the issue I have with it is the fact it depowers Miguel. He's supposed to be this badass vampire Spider-Man from the future, and he's got the theme, and he's got the suit, and he's even got a freaking cape. I'm expecting him to be like top tier Spider-Man, and then he gets finessed by Miles, who's been Spider-Man for like a year. That's like me training basketball for like a good year, like a good strong year, and then I beat LeBron 1v1. Actually, it's more like I beat LeBron and the entire NBA in like 1v like a few hundred. Is Miles the chosen one? Kinda, but I already thought it was a little off personally, the fact that he escapes the entire Spider Society, and then you put Miguel on top of that, and it's just like, really? Like I said, just for me though, it bothers me. I will say though, it's important to remember this is only a part 1 story, and I'm sure the next film is going to develop him a lot more and show us things that change how we see him in this movie. So the score I give him is just tentative until we get that second film.
I don't always like what I have to do, but I know I have to be the one to do it.
Miguel Ohara is a very solid antagonist for the film, and I like getting a look into a version of Spider-Man that's serious and traumatized and fighting more demons than the Pope's exorcist. His motive is pretty unique though, and I think his mindset is a great study of how loss can affect a hero who at the end of the day is trying to save people, but because of this guilt and sadness, that pursuit of doing good can be skewed into something else. I'm really excited to see him in the next film, but for now, I'm gonna give Spider-Man 2099 a 7.
Do you know for certain what happens if he breaks the canon?
Do you want to find out?